And I make that the hour. And with that I must congratulate you, Wild, on your, to borrow a phrase, dirty 30s. I do so much appreciate it. Hello, chat. Welcome back to another Torrid Tuesday stream. Now, I'm sorry that I wasn't here for you yesterday. Unfortunately, Lamp was doing some strange thing involving rearing certain of the beasts, and so you might hear some of them closer to the thing today. But he was so concerned about my telling you he had a spirit come and possess me. A strange thing indeed. But yes, I do have some special congratulations to give to our dear friend Les URL, friend of the channel, who has hit first this stream, and is thus entitled to his first entry upon the board. Let's get you up there, Les. And there we go. Planning some phasmophobia in the chat, are we? Well, I'm afraid it's a bad time for it, because while you're here you have nothing to be afraid of. But perhaps I'm getting ahead of myself. So, as we run through our list, there are no new people to thank for follows this time. We have addressed first. There are no new books today, and there are no badges this stream. Although I think I have decided on what kind of badge we will do for the final stream, where we read Emma. So you can look forward to that. But no, for today we shall be moving right on ahead to the reading of some poetry. Now I understand that yesterday the spirit who was here started you on some of the works of James Joyce, and they seemed to go over well, so I've been asked to continue them for you, but this isn't the way to do that at all, is it? No. Let's have things a little bit more proper, shall we? And there we are. That's a bit more like it. Now then, I hope you're all comfortable. We'll be continuing on with James Joyce's, what was it? Ah yes, chamber music. I do so hope you'll enjoy. Well, Wild, you're very welcome in your lurking. I do so appreciate it. 11. Bid adieu, adieu, adieu. Bid adieu to girlish days. Happy love is come to woo thee and woo thy girlish ways. The zone that doth become thee fair, the snood upon thy yellow hair. When thou hast heard his name upon the bugles of the cherubim, begin thou softly to unzone the girlish bosom unto him, and softly to undo the snood that is the sign of maidenhood. 12. What counsel has the hooded moon but in thy heart, my shyly sweet, of love in ancient Peliloon, glory in stars beneath his feet, a sage that is but kith and kin with the comedic capuchin. Believe me rather than that am wise in disregard of the divine. A glory kindles in those eyes, trembles to starlight, mine, oh mine. No more be tears in moon nor mist for thee, sweet sentimentalist. 13. Go seek her out, or courteously, and say I come, wind of spices whose song is ever epithalamium. Oh, hurry over the dark lands and run upon the sea. The seas and lands shall not divide us, my love and me. Now, wind of your good courtesy, I pray you go, and come into her garden and sing at her window, singing the bridal wind is blowing, for love is at his noon, and soon will your true love be with you, soon, oh soon. 14. My dove, my beautiful one, arise, arise. The night dew lies upon my lips and eyes. The odorous winds are weaving a music of sighs. Arise, arise, my dove, my beautiful one. I wait by the cedar tree, my sister, my love. White breast of the dove, my breast shall be your bed. The pale dew lies like a veil on my head. My fair one, my fair dove, arise, arise. 15. From dewy dreams my soul arise, from love's deep slumber and from death. For lo, the trees are full of sighs, whose leaves the morn admonisheth. Eastward the gradual dawn prevails, where softly burning fires appear, making to tremble all those vales of grey and golden gossamer, while sweetly, gently, secretly, the flowery bells of morn are stirred, and the wise choirs of faery begin innumerous to be heard. 16. Oh, cool is the valley now, and there, love, will we go, for many a choir is singing now where love did sometime go, and hear you not the thrushes calling, calling us away? Oh, cool and pleasant is the valley, and there, love, we will stay. 17. Because your voice was at my side, I gave him pain, because within my hand I held your hand again. There is no word nor any sign can make amend. He is a stranger to me now, who was my friend. 18. O sweetheart, hear you your lover's tale. A man shall have sorrow when friends him fail. For he shall know then friends be untrue, and a little ashes their words come to. But one unto him will softly move, and softly woo him in ways of love. His hand is under her smooth round breast, so he who has sorrow shall have rest. 19. Be not sad because all men prefer a lying clamour before you. Sweetheart, be at peace again. Can they dishonour you? They are sadder than old tears. Their lives ascend a continual sigh. Proudly they answer to their tears, as they deny, deny. 20. In the dark pine wood I would we lay, in deep cool shadow at noon of day. How sweet to lie there, sweet to kiss, where the great pine forest enaisled is. Thy kiss descending sweeter were, with the soft tumult of thy hair. O unto the pine wood at noon of day, come with me now, sweet love, away. 21. He who hath glory lost, nor hath found any soul to follow his, among his foes in scorn and wrath, holding to ancient nobleness, that high unconsolable one, his love is his companion. 22. For that so sweet imprisonment my soul dearest is fain, soft arms that woo me to relent and woo me to detain. Ah, could they ever hold me there, gladly were I a prisoner. Dearest, though interwoven arms by love made tremulous, that night allures me where alarms no wise may trouble us. But sleep to dream a sleep bewed, where soul with soul lies prisoned. 23. This heart that flutters near my heart, my hope and all my riches is, unhappy when we draw apart, and happy between kiss and kiss. My hope and all my riches, yes, and all my happiness. For there, as in some mossy nest, the wrens will diverse treasures keep. I laid those treasures I possessed, ere that mine eyes had learned to weep. Shall we not be as wise as they, though love live but a day? 24. Silently she's combing her long hair, silently and graciously with many a pretty air. The sun is in the willow leaves and on the dappled grass, and still she's combing her long hair before the looking glass. I pray you cease to comb out your long hair, for I have heard of witchery under a pretty air, that makes as one thing to the lover, staying and going hence, all fair with many a pretty air, and many a negligence. 25. Lightly come or lightly go, though thy heart presage thee woe, veils in many a wasted sun, Ori, let thy laughter run, till the irreverent mountain air ripple all thy flying hair. Lightly, lightly, ever so, clouds that wrap the veils below, at the hour of even star, lowliest attendants are, love and laughter song confessed, when the heart is heaviest. And I could go on, but the hour is nigh that we begin, so I hope you've taken some pleasure in those. They are rather fine verses. I am sorry to have missed the first 10 of them. But let me have a swallow of water and begin, as I always do at the beginning. As always, of course, if at any point you should happen to hear and miss something that I have said, let me know and I shall be happy to go back over it, for I never wish for you to miss anything said. Have you comments or questions? Do let me know. I am always happy to talk to you about them. If they be long, perhaps I shall wait until the end of a chapter, or I shall pause anyhow to drink. And if they be not, well then, perhaps I shall answer them then and there. But enough holding on and enough waiting. You have been patient. So if you are sitting comfortably, then without further ado, let us begin. Chapter 27. Emma did not repent her condescension in going to the Coles. The visit afforded her many pleasant recollections the next day, and all that she might be supposed to have lost on the side of dignified seclusion must be amply replayed in the splendour of popularity. She must have delighted the Coles, worthy people who deserved to be made happy, and left a name behind her that would not soon die away. Perfect happiness, even in memory, is not common, and there were 2 points on which she was not quite easy. She doubted whether she had not transgressed the duty of woman by woman in betraying her suspicions of Jane Fairfax's feelings to Frank Churchill. It was hardly right, but it had been so strong an idea that it would escape her, and his submission to all that she told was a compliment to her penetration, which made it difficult for her to be quite certain that she ought to have held her tongue. The other circumstance of regret related also to Jane Fairfax, and there she had no doubt. She did unfeignedly and unequivocally regret the inferiority of her own playing and singing. She did most heartily grieve over the idleness of her childhood, and sat down and practised vigorously an hour and a half. She was then interrupted by Harriet's coming in, and if Harriet's piano could have satisfied her, she might soon have been comforted. "Oh, if I could but play as well as you and Miss Fairfax." "Don't class us together, Harriet. My playing is more like hers than a lamp is like sunshine. Oh dear, I think you play the best of the two. I think you play quite as well as she does. I am sure I had much rather hear you. Everybody last night said how well you played. Those who knew anything about it must have felt the difference. The truth is, Harriet, that my playing is just good enough to be praised, but Jane Fairfax is much beyond it. Well, I shall always think you play quite as well as she does, or that if there is any difference, nobody would ever find it out. Mr. Cole said how much taste you had, and Mr. Frank Churchill talked a great deal about your tastes, and that he valued taste as much as much more than execution. Ah, but Jane Fairfax has them both, Harriet. Are you sure? I saw she had execution, but I did not know she had any taste. Nobody talked about it. And I hate Italian singing. There is no understanding a word of it. Besides, if she does play so very well, you know, it is no more than she is obliged to do, because she will have to teach. The Coxes were wondering last night whether she would get into any great family. How did you think the Coxes looked? Just as they always do. Very vulgar. They told me something, said Harriet, rather hesitatingly, but it is nothing of any consequence. Emma was obliged to ask what they had told her, though fearful of its producing Mr. Elton. They told me that Mr. Martin dined with them last Saturday. Oh, he came to their father upon some business, and he asked him to stay dinner. Oh. They talked a great deal about him, especially Anne Cox. I do not know what she meant, but she asked me if I thought I should go and stay there again next summer. She meant to be impertinently curious, just as such as Anne Cox should be. She said he was very agreeable the day he dined there. He sat by her at dinner. Miss Nash thinks either of the Coxes would be very glad to marry him. Very likely. I think they are, without exception, the most vulgar girls in Highbury. Harriet had business at Ford's. Emma thought it most prudent to go with her. Another accidental meeting with the Martins was possible, and in her present state would be dangerous. Harriet, tempted by everything and swayed by half a word, was always very long on a purchase, and while she was still hanging over muslins and changing her mind, Emma went to the door for amusement. Much could not be hoped from the traffic of even the busiest part of Highbury. Mr. Perry walking hastily by, Mr. William Cox letting himself in at the office door, Mr. Cole's carriage horses returning from exercise, or a stray letter boy on an obstinate mule, were the liveliest objects she could presume to expect. And when her eyes fell only on the butcher with his tray, a tidy old woman travelling homewards from the shop with her full basket, two curs quarrelling over a dirty bone, and a string of dawdling children round the baker's little bow window, eyeing the gingerbread, she knew she had no reason to complain, and was amused enough, quite enough still to stand at the door. A mind lively and at ease can do with seeing nothing, and can see nothing that does not answer. She looked down the Randalls Road. The scene enlarged. Two persons appeared, Mrs. Weston and her son-in-law. They were walking into Highbury, to Hartfield, of course. They were stopping, however, in the first place at Mrs. Bates, whose house was a little nearer Randalls than Ford's, and had all but knocked when Emma caught their eye. Immediately they crossed the road and came forward to her, and the agreeableness of yesterday's engagement seemed to give fresh pleasure to the present meeting. Mrs. Weston informed her that she was going to call on the Barneses or the Bateses in order to hear the new instrument. "But my companion tells me," said she, "that I absolutely promised Miss Bates last night that I would come this morning. I was not aware of it myself. I did not know that I had fixed a day, but as he says, I did. I am going now." "And while Mrs. Weston pays her visit, I may be allowed, I hope," said Frank Churchill, "to join your party and wait for her at Hartfield. if you are going home." Mrs. Weston was disappointed. "I thought you meant to go with me. They would be very much pleased." "Me? I should be quite in the way, but perhaps I may be equally in the way here. Miss Woodhouse looks as if she did not want me. My aunt always sends me off when she is shopping. She says I fidget to death, and Miss Woodhouse looks as if she could almost say the same. What am I to do?" "I am here on no business of my own," said Emma. "I am only waiting for my friend. She will probably have soon done, and then we shall go home. But you had better go with Mrs. Weston and hear the instrument." "Well, if you advise it, but," with a smile, "if Colonel Campbell should have employed a careless friend, and if it should prove to have an indifferent tone, what shall I say? I shall be no support to Mrs. Weston. She might do very well by herself. A disagreeable truth would be palatable through her lips, but I am the wretchedest being in the world at a civil falsehood." "I do not believe any such thing," replied Emma. "I am persuaded that you can be as insincere as your neighbours when it is necessary. There is no reason to suppose the instrument is indifferent. Quite otherwise indeed, if I understand Miss Fairfax's opinion last night." "Do come with me," said Mrs. Weston. "If it be not very disagreeable to you, it need not detain us long. We will go to Hartfield afterwards. We will follow them to Hartfield. I really wish you to call with me. It will be felt so great an attention, and I always thought you meant it." He could say no more. With the hope of Hartfield to reward him, returned with Mrs. Weston to Mrs. Bates's door. Emma watched them in, and then joined Harriet at the interesting counter, trying with all the force of her own mind to convince her that if she wanted plain muslin it was of no use looking at figured, and that a blue ribbon, be it ever so beautiful, would still never match her yellow pattern. At last it was all settled, even to the destination of the parcel. "Shall I send it to Mrs. Goddard's, ma'am?" asked Mrs. Ford. Yes, to Mrs. Goddard's. Only my pattern gown is at Hartfield." "No, you shall send it to Hartfield, if you please. But then Mrs. Goddard will want to see it, and I could take the pattern gown home any day. But I shall want the ribbon directly, so it had better go to Hartfield. At least the ribbon. You could make it 2 parcels, Mrs. Ford, could you not?" "It's not worthwhile, Harriet, to give Mrs. Ford the trouble of 2 parcels." "No, more it is." "No trouble in the world, ma'am," said the obliging Mrs. Ford. "Oh, but indeed, I would much rather have it have it only in one." "Then, if you please, you'll send it all to Mrs. Goddard's. I do not know. No. I think, Miss Woodhouse, I may just as well have it sent to Hartfield, and take it home with me at night. What do you advise?" "That you do not give another half-second to the subject. To Hartfield, if you please, Mrs. Ford." Ah, joy. "Aye, that will be much the best," said Harriet, quite satisfied. "I should not at all like to have it sent to Mrs. Goddard's." Voices approached the shop, or rather one voice and 2 ladies. Mrs. Weston and Miss Bates met them at the door. "My dear Miss Woodhouse," said the latter, "I am just run across to entreat the favour of you to come and sit down with us a little while, and give us your opinion of our new instrument. You and Miss Smith. How do you do, Miss Smith?" "Very well, I thank you, and I begged Mrs. Weston to come with me, that I might be sure of succeeding." "I hope Mrs. Bates and Miss Fairfax are very well. I am much obliged to you. My mother is delightfully well, and Jane caught no cold last night. How is Mr. Woodhouse? I am so glad to hear such good account. Mr. Weston told me you were here." "Oh. Then," said I must run across. I am sure Miss Woodhouse will allow me just to run across and entreat her to come in. My mother will be so very happy to see her, and now we are such a nice party she cannot refuse." "Aye, pray do," said Mr. Frank Churchill. "Miss Woodhouse's opinion of the instrument will be worth having. But, said I shall be more sure of succeeding if one of you will go with me. Oh, said he, wait half a minute till I have finished my job. But would you believe it, Miss Woodhouse, there he is, in the most obliging manner in the world, fastening in the rivet of my mother's spectacles. Abbe, good to have you, welcome in. We're just now partway into the latest chapter of, Emma. And Emma has come down to, Emma and Harriet have come down to Ford's shop and are going over a pattern, and they ran into Mrs. Weston and young Master Churchill, who were going to see the new instrument and have just been approached to come and see it themselves with the party, which is where we're at. But thank you for stopping by, I do so appreciate it. For would you believe it, Miss Woodhouse, there he is, in the most obliging manner in the world, fastening in the rivet of my mother's spectacles. The rivet came out, you know, this morning. So very obliging. My mother had no use of her spectacles, could not put them on. And by the by, everybody ought to have 2 pairs of spectacles. They should indeed. Jane said so. I mean to take them over to John Saunders the first thing I did, but something or other hindered me all morning. First one thing, then another. There's no saying what, you know. At one time Patty came to say she thought the kitchen chimney wanted sweeping. Oh, said I, Patty, do not come with your bad news to me. Here is the rivet of your mistress's spectacles out. And the baked apples came home. Mrs. Wallace sent them by her boy. They are extremely civil and obliging to us, the Wallaces, always. I have heard some people say that Mrs. Wallace can be uncivil, and give a very rude answer, but we have never known anything but the greatest attention from them. And it cannot be for the value of our custom now. For what is our consumption of bread, you know? Only 3 of us. Besides dear Jane at present, and she really eats nothing. Makes such a shocking breakfast, you know. You'd be quite frightened if you saw it. I dare not let my mother know how little she is. So I say one thing and then I say another, and it passes off. But about the middle of the day she gets hungry, and there is nothing she likes so well as these baked apples. And they are extremely wholesome, for I took the opportunity the other day of asking Mr. Perry. I happened to meet him in the street. Not that I had any doubt before. I have so often heard Mr. Woodhouse recommend a baked apple. I believe it is the only way that Mr. Woodhouse thinks the fruit thoroughly wholesome. We have apple dumplings, however, very often. Patty makes an excellent apple dumpling. Well, Mrs. Weston, you have prevailed, I hope, and these ladies will oblige us. Emma would be very happy to wait on Mrs. Bates, etc., and they did at last move out of the shop, with no further delay from Miss Bates then. How do you do, Mrs. Ford? I beg your pardon. I did not see you before. I hear you have a charming collection of new ribbons from town. Jane came back delighted yesterday. Thank you. The gloves do very well. Only a little too large about the wrist, but Jane is taking them in. What was I talking of? She said, beginning again when they were all in the street. Emma wondered on what all the medley she would fix. I declare I cannot recollect what I was talking of. Oh, my mother's spectacles. So very obliging of Mr. Frank Churchill. Oh, said he, do you think I can fasten the rivet? I like a job of this kind excessively, which, you know, showed him to be so very... Indeed, I must say that, much as I had heard of him before, and much as I had expected, he very far exceeds anything. I do congratulate you, Mrs. Weston, most warmly. He seems everything the fondest parent could... Oh, said he, I can fasten the rivet. I like a job of that sort excessively. I never shall forget his manner. And when I brought out the baked apples from the closet, and hoped our friends would be so very obliging as to take some. Oh, said he directly, there is nothing in the way of a fruit half so good, and these are the finest looking home-baked apples I ever saw in my life. That, you know, was so very... And I am sure by his manner it was no compliment. Indeed, they are very delightful apples, and Mrs. Wallace does them full justice. Only we do not have them baked more than twice, and Mr. Woodhouse made us promise to have them done 3 times. But Miss Woodhouse will be so good as not to mention it. The apples themselves are the very finest sort for baking, beyond all doubt. All from Donwell, some of Mr. Knightley's most liberal supply. He sends us a sack every year, and certainly there never was such a keeping apple anywhere as one of his trees. I believe there is 2 of them. My mother says the orchard was always famous in her younger days, but I was really quite shocked the other day. And Mr. Knightley called one morning, and Jane was eating the apples, and we talked about them and said how much she enjoyed them, and he asked whether we were not got to the end of our stock. I am sure you must be, said he, and I will send you another supply, for I have a great many more than I can ever use. William Larkins let me keep a larger quantity than usual this year. I will send you some more before they get good for nothing. So I begged he would not, for really as to ours being gone, I could not absolutely say that we had a great many left. It was but 6 indeed, but they should be all kept for Jane, and I could not bear that he should be sending us more, so liberal as it had already been. And Jane said the same, and when he was gone she almost quarrelled with me. No, I should not say quarrelled. We never had a quarrel in our lives, but she was quite distressed that I had owned the apples were so nearly gone. She wished I had made him believe we had a great many left. Oh, said I, my dear, I did say as much as I could. However, the very same evening William Larkins came over with a large basket of apples, the same sort of apples, a bushel at least, and was very much obliged, and went down and spoke to William Larkins, and said everything as you may suppose. William Larkins is such an old acquaintance. I am always glad to see him, but however I found afterwards from Patty that William said it was all the apples of that sort his master had. He had brought them all, and now his master had not one left to bake or boil. William did not seem to mind it himself. He was so pleased to think his master had sold so many, for William, you know, thinks more of his master's profit than anything. But Mrs. Hodges, he said, was quite displeased at their being all sent away. She could not bear that our master should not be able to have another apple tart this spring. He told Patty this, but bid her not to mind it, and be sure not to say anything to us about it, for Mrs. Hodges would be cross sometimes, and as long as so many sacks were sold it did not signify who ate the remainder. And so Patty told me, and I was excessively shocked indeed. I would not have Mr. Knightley know that anything about it for the world. He would be so very... I wanted to keep it from Jane's knowledge, but unluckily I had mentioned it before I was aware. Miss Bates had just done as Patty opened the door, and the visitors walked up the stairs without having any regular narration to attend to, pursued only by the sound of her desultory goodwill. Pray take care, Mrs. Weston. There is a step at the turning. Pray take care, Miss Woodhouse. Ours is rather a dark staircase, rather darker and narrower than one could wish. Miss Smith, pray take care. Miss Woodhouse, I am quite concerned. I am sure you hit your foot. Miss Smith, this step at the turning. And that's the end of chapter 28. Well, well, well. Let me have my drink of water and press on. Well, we'll do a little commentary, I should say. Not a lot of consequence happens there. We do see to a rather extreme degree how much of a chatterbox Miss Bates is. Continually going on, it seems. Strange indeed, strange indeed. And of course we are about to see again another rendition of the piano, and perhaps some small coming to a head of the rivalry between Mrs. Jane Fairfax and our own dear Emma. What else is there to say? Of course we have more of Mr. Frank Churchill's good character being established. Such a lovely man, but also John Knightley, giving away the last of his own apples to his neighbours. A very good man indeed himself. Many men of fine character, it seems. Many men of fine character. But little else to say on the matter, so... shall we press on? Chapter 28. The appearance of the little sitting room as they entered was tranquillity itself. Mrs. Bates, deprived of her usual employment, slumbering on the one side of the fire. Frank Churchill at a table near her, most deedily occupied about the spectacles, and Jane Fairfax standing with her back to them, intent on her pianoforte. Busy as he was, however, the young man was yet able to show a most happy countenance on seeing Emma again. "This is a pleasure," said he, in rather a low voice, coming at least 10 minutes earlier than I had calculated. "You find me trying to be useful. Tell me if you think I shall succeed." "What?" said Mrs. Weston. "Have you not finished it yet? You would not earn a very good livelihood in a working silversmith at this rate." "I have not been working uninterruptedly," he replied. "I have been assisting Miss Fairfax in trying to make her instrument stand steadily. It was not quite firm, an unevenness in the floor, I believe. You see, we have been wedging one leg with paper. This was very kind of you to be persuaded to come. I was almost afraid you would be hurrying home." He contrived that she should be seated by him, and was sufficiently employed in looking out the best baked apple for her, and trying to make her help or advise him in his work, till Jane Fairfax was quite ready to sit down at the pianoforte again. As she was not immediately ready, Emma did suspect to arise from the state of her nerves. She had not yet possessed the instrument long enough to touch it without emotion. She must reason herself into the power of performance. And Emma could not but pity such feelings, whatever their origin, and could not but resolve never to expose them to her neighbour again. At last Jane began, and though the first bars were feebly given, the powers of the instrument were gradually done full justice to. Mrs. Weston had been delighted before, and was delighted again. Emma joined her in all her praise, and the pianoforte, with every proper discrimination, was pronounced to be altogether of the highest promise. "Whoever Colonel Campbell might employ," said Frank Churchill, with a smile at Emma, "the person has not chosen ill. I heard a good deal of Colonel Campbell's taste at Weymouth, and the softness of the upper notes I am sure is exactly what he and all that party would particularly prize. I dare say, Miss Fairfax, that he either gave his friend very minute directions, or wrote to Broadwood himself. Do you not think so?" Jane did not look round. She was not obliged to hear. Mrs. Weston had been speaking to her at the same moment. "It is not fair," said Emma in a whisper. "Mine was a random guess. Do not distress her." He shook his head with a smile, and looked as if he had a very little doubt and very little mercy. Soon afterwards he began again. "How much your friends in Ireland must be enjoying your pleasure on this occasion, Miss Fairfax. I dare say they often think of you, and wonder which will be the precise day of the instrument's coming to hand. Do you imagine Colonel Campbell knows the business to be going forward just at this time? Do you imagine it to be the consequence of an immediate commission from him, or that he may have sent only a general direction, an order indefinite as to time, to depend upon contingencies and conveniences?" He paused. She could not but hear. She could not avoid answering. "Till I have a letter from Colonel Campbell," said she, in a voice of forced calmness, "I can imagine nothing with any confidence. It must all be conjecture." "Conjecture? Aye. Sometimes one conjectures right, and sometimes one conjectures wrong. I wish I could conjecture how soon I shall make this rivet quite firm. What nonsense one talks, Miss Woodhouse, when hard at work, if one talks at all. Your real workmen, I suppose, hold their tongues. But we gentlemen labourers, if we get hold of a word. Miss Fairfax said something about conjecturing. There, it is done. I have the pleasure, madam, to Miss Bates, of restoring your spectacles, healed for the present." He was very warmly thanked, both by mother and daughter. To escape a little from the latter, he went to the pianoforte, and begged Miss Fairfax, who was still sitting at it, to play something more. "If you are very kind," said he, "it will be one of the waltzes we danced last night. Let me live them over again. You did not enjoy them as I did. You appeared tired the whole time. I believe you were glad we danced no longer, but I would have given worlds, all the worlds one ever has to give, for another half hour." She played. What felicity it is to hear a tune again which has made one happy. If I mistake not, that was danced at Weymouth. She looked up at him for a moment, coloured deeply, and played something else. He took her music from a chair near the pianoforte, and turning to Emma said, "Here is something quite new to me. Do you know it? Crammer. And here are a new set of Irish melodies, that, from such a quarter, one might expect. This was all sent with the instrument. Very thoughtful of Colonel Campbell, was it not? He knew Miss Fairfax could not have no music here. I honour that part of the attention particularly. It shows it to have been so thoughtfully from the heart. Nothing hastily done, nothing incomplete. True affection only could have prompted it." Emma wished he would be less pointed, yet could not help being amused. And when, on glancing her eye towards Jane Fairfax, she caught the remains of a smile, when she saw that with all the dark blush of consciousness there had been a smile of secret delight, she had less scruple in the amusement, and much less compunction with respect to her. This amiable, upright, perfect Jane Fairfax was apparently cherishing very reprehensible feelings. He brought all the music to her, and they looked it over together. Emma took the opportunity of whispering, "You speak too plain. She must not understand you." "I hope she does. I would have her understand me. I am not the least ashamed of my meaning. But really, I am half ashamed, and I wish I had never taken up the idea. I am very glad you did, and that you communicated it to me. I have now a key to all her odd looks and ways. Leave shame to her. If she does wrong, she ought to feel it. She is not entirely without it, I think. I do not see much sign of it. She is playing Robin Adair at this moment, his favourite." Shortly afterwards, Miss Bates, passing near the window, descried Mr. Knightley on horseback not far off. "Mr. Knightley, I declare, I must speak to him if possible, just to thank him. I will not open the window here, it would give you all cold. But I can go into my mother's room, you know. I dare say he will come in when he knows who is here. Quite delightful to have you all meet so. Our little room is so honoured." She was in the adjoining chamber while she still spoke, and opening the casement there immediately called Mr. Knightley's attention, and every syllable of their conversation was distinctly heard by the others, as if it had passed within the same apartment. "How do you do? How do you do? Very well, I thank you. So obliged to you for the carriage last night. We were just in time, my mother just ready for us. Pray come in, do come in. You'll find some friends here." So began Miss Bates, and Mr. Knightley seemed determined to be heard in his turn. Most resolutely and commandingly did he say, "How is your niece, Miss Bates? I want to inquire after you all, but particularly your niece. How is Miss Fairfax? I hope she caught no cold last night. How is she today? Tell me how Miss Fairfax is." And Miss Bates was obliged to give a direct answer before he would hear her on anything else. The listeners were amused, and Mrs. Weston gave Emma a look of particular meaning, but Emma still shook her head in steady scepticism. "So obliged to you, so very much obliged to you for the carriage," resumed Miss Bates. He cut her short with, "I am going to Kingston. Can I do anything for you?" "Oh dear, Kingston, are you? Mrs. Cole was saying the other day she wanted something from Kingston. Mrs. Cole has servants to send. Can I do anything for you? No, I thank you. But do come in. Who do you think is here? Miss Woodhouse and Miss Smith. So kind as to call to hear the new pianoforte. Do put up your horse at the Crown and come in. Well, said he, in a deliberating manner, for 5 minutes, perhaps. And here is Mrs. Weston and Mr. Frank Churchill too. Quite delightful. So many friends. No, not now, I thank you. I could not stay 2 minutes. I must get on to Kingston as fast as I can. Oh, do come in. They will be so very happy to see you. No, your room is full enough. I will call another day and hear the pianoforte. Well, I am so sorry. Oh, Mr. Knightley, what a delightful party last night. Extremely pleasant. Did you ever see such dancing? Was it not delightful? Miss Woodhouse and Mr. Frank Churchill. I never saw anything equal to it. Oh, very delightful indeed. I can say nothing less, for I suppose Miss Woodhouse and Mr. Frank Churchill are hearing everything that passes. And, raising his voice still more, I do not see why Miss Fairfax should not be mentioned too. I think Miss Fairfax dances very well, and Mrs. Weston is the very best country dance player, without exception, in England. Now, if your friends have any gratitude, they will say something pretty loud about you and me in return, but I cannot stay to hear it. Oh, Mr. Knightley, just 1 moment more. Something of consequence. So shocked. Jane and I are both so shocked about the apples. What is the matter now? To think of your sending us all your store apples. You said you had a great many, and now you have not one left. We really are so shocked. Mrs. Hodges may well be angry. William Lark had mentioned it here. You should not have done it. Indeed you should not. Ah, he is off. He never can bear to be thanked. But I thought he would have stayed now. It would have been a pity not to have mentioned... Well, returning into the room, I have not been able to succeed. Mr. Knightley cannot stop. He is going to Kingston. He asked me if he could do anything. Yes, said Jane. We heard his kind offers. We heard everything. Oh, yes, my dear, I dare say you might, because you know the door was open and the window was open, and Mr. Knightley spoke so loud. You must have heard everything, to be sure. Can I do anything for you at Kingston? Said he. So I just mentioned. Oh, Miss Woodhouse, must you be going? You seem but just to come. So very obliging of you. Emma found it really time to be at home. The visit had already lasted long, and, on examining watches, so much of the morning was perceived to be gone, that Mrs. Weston and her companion, taking leave also, could allow themselves only to walk with the 2 young ladies to Hartfield gates, before they set off for Randalls. And so ends chapter 28. I shall have a swallow of water. So, what to say of that then? Well, first and foremost, I think the most obvious thing is that Mr. Knightley continues his poor opinion of Mr. Churchill, given that he was inclined to come and visit, if only briefly, when thinking only that Emma and Harriet were there. But on hearing of Mrs. Weston, with whom he seems fond, and Mr. Frank Churchill, he decides that he cannot spare the time and must instead be on to Kingston quite immediately. And we have a little bit of, would you call it flirtation? I certainly think there's something to it. Though what exactly it is and who it's between, I somewhat wonder. If my theory holds about the actual deliverer of the piano, then it might be said to be between Mr. Frank Churchill and Miss Jane Fairfax. Though at the same time it does appear, at least from Emma's perspective, between Mr. Churchill and herself, and at the expense of Miss Fairfax. And indeed, if Miss Fairfax is unaware of the nature of the piano, then it might well be that Mr. Churchill is playing both sides. Well, no, I suppose rather he's playing both sides if she does know and if she does not. And only in time will it become apparent whom he is flirting with here. Indeed, layers upon layers. A truly complex and multifaceted conversation. Rather delightful. But not much else to be said. We're coming up to the ads soon, but I'll begin with the next chapter. I think probably we'll get through 2 more today. I don't intend to go too long. Oh, but maybe not. The next 2 seem to be quite short. We'll see how we get on. But I don't intend to go much beyond an hour and a half today, so... Chapter 29. It may be possible to do without dancing entirely. Instances have been known of young people passing many, many months successively without being at any ball of any description, and no material injury accrued to either body or to mind. But when a beginning is made, when the felicities of rapid motion have once been, though slightly, felt, it must be very heavy set that does not ask for more. Frank Churchill had danced once at Highbury, and longed to dance again, and the last half hour of an evening which Mr. Woodhouse was persuaded to spend with his daughter at Randall's was passed by the 2 young people in schemes on the subject. Frank's was the first idea, and his the greatest zeal in pursuing it, for the lady was the best judge of the difficulties, and the most solicitous for accommodations and appearance. But still, she had inclination enough for showing people again how delightfully Mr. Frank Churchill and Miss Woodhouse danced, for doing that, in which she needed not blush to compose herself with Jane Fairfax, and even for simple dancing itself, without any of the wicked aids of vanity, to assist him first in pacing out that room they were in, to see what it could be made to hold, and then in taking the dimensions of the other parlour, in hopes of discovering, in spite of all that Mr. Weston could say of their exactly equal size, that it was a little the larger. His first proposition and request, that the dance begun at Mr. Cole's should be finished there, that the same party should be collected, and the same musician engaged, met with the readiest acquiescence. Mr. Weston entered into the idea with thorough enjoyment, and Mrs. Weston most willingly undertook to play as long as they could wish to dance, and the interesting employment had followed of reckoning up exactly who there would be, and portioning out the indispensable division of space to every couple. You and Miss Smith and Miss Fairfax will be there, or will be 3, and the 2 Mrs. Coxes 5 had been repeated many times over, and there will be the 2 Gilberts, young Cox, my father and myself, besides Mr. Knightley. Yes, that will be quite enough for pleasure. You and Miss Smith and Miss Fairfax will be 3, and the 2 Miss Coxes 5, and for 5 couples there will be plenty of room. But soon it came to be on one side. But will there be a good room for 5 couples? I really do not think there will. On another. And after all, 5 couples are not enough to make it worthwhile to stand up. 5 couples are nothing when one thinks seriously about it. It will not do to invite 5 couples. It can be allowable only as a thought of the moment. Somebody said that Miss Gilbert was expected at her brother's, and must be invited with the rest. Somebody else believed Mrs. Gilbert would have danced the other evening if she had been asked. A word was put in for a 2nd young Cox, and at last Mr. Weston, naming one family of cousins who must be included, and another of very old acquaintances who could not be left out, it became a certainty that the 5 couples would at least be 10, and a very interesting speculation in what possible manner they could be disposed of. The doors of the 2 rooms were just opposite each other. Might they not use both rooms and dance across the passage? It seemed the best scheme, and yet it was not so good but that many of them wanted a better. Emma said it would be awkward. Mrs. Weston was in distress about the supper, and Mr. Woodhouse opposed it earnestly on the score of health. It made him so very unhappy indeed that it could not be persevered in. "Oh no," said he, It would be the extreme of imprudence. I could not bear it for Emma. Emma is not strong. She would catch a dreadful cold. So would poor little Harriet. So you would all, Miss Weston. You would be quite laid up. Do not let them talk of such a wild thing. Pray do not let them talk of it. That young man, speaking lower, is very thoughtless. Do not tell his father, but that young man is not quite the thing. He has been opening the doors very often this evening, and keeping them open very inconsiderately. He does not think of the draught. I do not mean to set you against him, but indeed he is not quite the thing. Mrs. Weston was very sorry for such a charge. She knew the importance of it, and said everything in her power to do it away. Every door was now closed, the passage plan given up, and the first scheme of dancing only in the room they were in resorted to again. And with such goodwill on Frank Churchill's part that the space which a quarter of an hour before had been deemed barely sufficient for 5 couples, was now endeavoured to be made out quite enough for 10. "We were too magnificent," said he. "We allowed unnecessary room. 10 couples may stand here very well." Emma demurred. "It would be a crowd, a sad crowd, and what could be worse than dancing without space to turn in?" "Very true," he gravely replied. "It was very bad," but still he went on measuring, and still he ended with, "I think there will be very tolerable room for 10 couples, and the ads come on now, so I break here." I have a quick swallow of water as they begin. I can't say that I've ever had to take the time to plan a ball, so I cannot say how much care must be taken in planning for enough space for individuals. It seems a strange thing to consider by my mind, but I suppose it must be important. Although the idea that one might struggle to fit 5 people into a space, and then presume to place 10 is foolish, of course. And I seem to recall that the last time we were here there was some mention that, I believe it was the town public house, was originally intended to be used for such events, and they never saw use aside from occasional meetings of local societies. So I suspect it is to be revived. And indeed, it perhaps turned into something of a party venue for the town of Hartfield. But we shall see. Certainly Mr. Frank Churchill means to liven things up while he is here. I thought it was only for a fortnight, but certainly he seems to be taking his time to tour the space and take best advantage of it. Perhaps it was longer, I can't quite recall. But still, an eligible young bachelor arranging dances, he must be very popular. And of course people do have such a good opinion of the man. Such a good opinion indeed. I'm quite enjoying Emma so far, the shape of it. I think if I was trying to read it all in one go or in a very short space of time, I'd grow tired of it. By doing it as we are, once a week, I find myself looking forward to it, falling back into it and taking pleasure in the things I remember from before. It's a good way to do it, I think. I hope you're all enjoying it as well. I have quite an idea of where I can find more Jane Austen. I think once I'm done with this I shall go and collect some more. I still think it will be some weeks yet. I do have a badge in mind for the day when it is all over. I might actually start designing it sooner than I normally do, give it a little bit more attention and detail. I have a plan that I think is quite marvellous. We shall see. When the ads come to a close, you'll have another swallow of water. And we are back. Pressing on then. I think there will be very tolerable room for 10 couples. No, no, said she. You are quite unreasonable. It would be dreadful to be standing so close. Nothing can be farther from pleasure than to be dancing in a crowd in a little room. There is no denying it, he replied. I agree with you exactly. A crowd in a little room. Miss Woodhouse, you have the art of giving pictures in few words. Exquisite, quite exquisite. Still, however, having proceeded so far, one is unwilling to give up. It would be a disappointment to my father, and altogether I do not know that... I am rather of the opinion that 10 couples might stand here very well. Emma perceived the nature of his gallantry. It was a little self-willed, and that he would rather oppose the law than lose the pleasure of dancing with her. But she took the compliment and forgave the rest. Had she intended ever to marry him, it might have been worthwhile to pause and consider, and try to understand the value of his preference, and the character of his temper. But for all the purpose of their acquaintance, he was quite amiable enough. Before the middle of the next day he was at Hartfield, and he entered the room with such an agreeable smile as certified the continuance of the scheme. It soon appeared that he came to announce an improvement. Well, Mrs. Woodhouse, he almost immediately began, your inclination for dancing has not been quite frightened away, I hope, by the terrors of my father's little rooms. I bring a new proposal on the subject, a thought of my father's which waits only your approbation to be acted upon. May I hope, for the honour of your hand, for the first 2 dances of this little projected ball, to be given not at Randall's, but at the Crown Inn? The Crown? Yes. If you and Mr. Woodhouse see no objection, and I trust you cannot, my father hopes his friends will be so kind as to visit him there. Better accommodations he can promise them, and not a less grateful welcome than at Randall's. It is his own idea. Mrs. Weston sees no objection to it, provided you are satisfied. This is what we all feel. Oh, you were perfectly right. 10 couples in either of the Randalls' rooms would have been insufferable. Dreadful. I felt how right you were the whole time, and was too anxious for securing anything to like to yield. Is not it a good exchange? Your consent. I hope your consent. It appears to me a plan that nobody can object to, if Mr. and Mrs. Weston do not think. I think it admirable, and, as far as I can answer for myself, shall be most happy. It seems the only improvement that could be. Papa, do you not think it is an excellent improvement? She was obliged to repeat and explain it, before it was fully comprehended, and then, being quite new, further representations were necessary to make it acceptable. No, he thought it very far from an improvement, a very bad plan, much worse than the other. A room at an inn was always damp and dangerous, and never properly aired, or fit to be inhabited. If they must dance, they had better dance at Randall's. He had never been in the room at the Crown in his life, did not know the people who kept it by sight. Oh no, a very bad plan. They would catch worse colds at the Crown than anywhere. I was going to observe, sir, said Frank Churchill, that one of the great recommendations of this change would be the very little danger of anybody's catching cold. So much less danger at the Crown than at Randall's. Mr. Perry might have reason to regret the alteration, but nobody else could. Sir, said Mr. Woodhouse, rather warmly, you are very much mistaken if you suppose Mr. Perry to be that sort of character. Mr. Perry is extremely concerned when any of us are ill, but I do not understand how the rooms at the Crown can be safer for you than your father's home. From the very circumstance of it being larger, sir, we shall have no occasion to open the windows at all, not once the whole evening, and it is that dreadful habit of opening the windows, letting in cold air upon heated bodies which, as you well know, sir, does the mischief. Open the windows? But surely, Mr. Churchill, no one would think of opening the windows at Randall's. Nobody could be so imprudent. I never heard of such a thing. Dancing with open windows. I am sure neither your father nor Mrs. Weston, poor Miss Taylor that was, would suffer it. Thank you kindly, Abbe. I shall drink once again to your health. You do take such good care of me, and I am very appreciative. Poor Miss Taylor that was, would suffer it. Ah, sir, but a thoughtless young person will sometimes step behind a window curtain and throw up a sash without its being suspected. I have often known it done myself. Have you indeed, sir? Bless me, I never could have supposed it. But I live out of the world, and am often astonished at what I hear. However, this does make a difference, and perhaps when we come to talk it over. But these sort of things require a good deal of consideration. One cannot resolve upon them in a hurry. If Mr. and Mrs. Weston will be so obliging as to call here one morning, we may talk it over and see what can be done. But unfortunately, sir, my time is so limited. Oh, interrupted Emma, there will be plenty of time for talking everything over. There's no hurry at all. If it can be contrived to be at the town, Papa, it will be very convenient for the horses. They will be so near their own stable. So they will, my dear. That is a great thing. Not that James ever complained, but it is right to spare our horses when we can. If I could be sure of the rooms being thoroughly aired. But is Mrs. Stokes to be trusted? I doubt it. I do not know her even by sight. I can answer for everything of that nature, sir, because it will be under Mrs. Weston's care. Mrs. Weston undertakes to direct the whole. There, Papa. Now you must be satisfied. Our own dear Mrs. Weston, who is carefulness itself. Do not you remember what Mr. Perry said so many years ago when I had the measles? If Miss Taylor undertakes to wrap Miss Emma up, you need not have any fear, sir. How often have I heard you speak of it as such a compliment to her? Aye, very true. Mr. Perry did say so. I shall never forget it. Poor little Emma. You were very bad with the measles. That is, you would have been very bad, but for Perry's great attention. He came 4 times a day for a week. He said from the first it was a very good sort, which were a great comfort. But the measles are a dreadful complaint. I hope whenever poor Isabella's little ones have the measles, she will send for Perry. My father and Mrs. Weston are at the Crown at this moment, said Frank Churchill, examining the capabilities of the house. I left them there and came on to Hartfield, impatient for your opinion, and hoping you might be persuaded to join them and give your advice on the spot. I was desired to say so from both. It would be the greatest pleasure to them if you could allow me to attend you there. They can do nothing satisfactorily without you. Emma was most happy to be called to such counsel, and her father, engaging to think it all over while she was gone, the 2 young people set off together without delay for the Crown. There were Mr. and Mrs. Weston, delighted to see her and receive her approbation, very busy and very happy in their different ways. She in some little distress, and he finding everything perfect. Emma, said she, this paper is worse than I expected. Look, in places you see it is dreadfully dirty, and the wainscot is more yellow and forlorn than anything I could have imagined. My dear, you are too particular, said her husband. What does all that signify? You will see nothing of it by candlelight. It will be as clean as Randall's by candlelight. We never see anything on our club nights. The ladies here probably exchanged looks, which meant men never know when things are dirty or not. And the gentleman perhaps thought each to himself, women will have their little nonsense and needless care. One perplexity, however, arose which the gentleman did not disdain. It regarded a supper room. At the time of the ballroom's being built, Suppers had not been in question, and a small card-room adjoining was the only addition. What was to be done? This card-room would be wanted as a card-room now, or, if cards were conveniently voted unnecessary by their four selves, still was it not too small for any comfortable supper? Another room of much better size might be secured for the purpose, but it was at the other end of the house, and a long awkward passage must be gone through to get to it. This made a difficulty. Mrs. Weston was afraid of draughts for the young people in the passage, and neither Emma nor the gentleman could tolerate the prospect of being miserably crowded at supper. Mrs. Weston proposed having no regular supper, merely sandwiches, etc., set out in the little room, but that was scouted as a wretched suggestion. A private dance without sitting down to supper was pronounced an infamous fraud upon the rights of men and women, and Mrs. Weston must not speak of it again. She then took another line of expediency, and looking into the doubtful room, observed, "I do not think it is so very small. We shall not be many, you know." And Mr. Weston was at the same time walking briskly with long steps through the passageway, and calling out, "You talk a great deal of the length of this passage, my dear. It is a mere nothing after all, and not the least draught from the stairs." "I wish," said Mrs. Weston, "one could know which arrangement our guests in general would like best. To do what would be most generally pleasing must be our object. If one could but tell what that would be." "Yes, very true," cried Frank. "Very true. You want your neighbour's opinion. I do not wonder at you. If one could ascertain what the chief of them, the Coles, for instance, they are not far off. Shall I call upon them? Or Miss Bates? She is still nearer. And I do not know whether Miss Bates is not as likely to understand the inclination of the rest of the people as anybody. I think we do want a larger council. Suppose I go and invite Miss Bates to join us." "Well, if you please," said Mrs. Weston, rather hesitating, "if you think she will be of any use." "You will get nothing of the purpose from Miss Bates," said Emma. "She will be all delight and gratitude, but she will tell you nothing. She will not even listen to your questions. I see no advantage in counselling Miss Bates." "But she is so amusing, so extremely amusing. I am very fond of hearing Miss Bates talk, and I need not bring the whole family, you know." Here Mr. Weston joined them, and in hearing what was proposed, gave it his decided approbation. "Aye, do, Frank. Go and fetch Miss Bates, and let us end the matter at once. She'll enjoy the scheme, I'm sure. I do not know a proper person for showing us how to do away difficulties. Fetch Miss Bates. We are growing a little too nice. She is a standing lesson of us how to be happy. But fetch them both. Invite them both." "Both, sir? Can the old lady?" "The old lady. No, the young lady, to be sure. I shall think you a great blockhead, Frank, if you bring the aunt without the niece." "Oh, I beg your pardon, sir. I did not immediately recollect. Undoubtedly, if you wish it, I will endeavour to persuade them both." And away he ran. Long before he reappeared, attending the short, neat, brisk-moving aunt and her elegant niece, Mrs. Weston, like a sweet-tempered woman and a good wife, had examined the passage again and found the evils of it much less than she had supposed before. Indeed, very trifling. And here ended the difficulties of decision. All the rest, in speculation at least, was perfectly smooth. All the minor arrangements of table and chair, lights and music, tea and supper, made themselves, all left as mere trifles to be settled at any time between Mrs. Weston and Mr. Stokes, or Mrs. Stokes, sorry. Everybody invited was certainly to come. Frank had already written to Enscombe to propose staying a few days beyond his fortnight, which could not possibly be refused, and a delightful dance it was to be. Most cordially, when Miss Bates arrived, did she agree that it must. As a counsellor she was not wanted, but as an approver, a much safer character, she was truly welcome. Her approbation, at once general and minute, warm and incessant, could not but please, and for another half hour they were all walking to and fro between the different rooms, some suggesting, some attending, and all in happy enjoyment of the future. The party did not break up without Emma's being positively secured for the 2 first dances by the hero of the evening, nor without her overhearing Mrs. Weston whisper to his wife. Or was it Mr. Weston whisper to his wife? "He has asked her, my dear. That's right. I knew he would." And that's the end of chapter 29. Now, I'm a little worried about the length of the event that is going to come up, but having a little look forward, it does not appear to me that the next chapter will contain the event, so hopefully it shall all be done in good time. That being the case, though, let's see. What can we say about it? It seems the planning is going well, and I was right in remembering that it was an inn, not a public house, but still. There was a local place built to be a dance hall, though in an old-fashioned style that causes some inconvenience, it seems. Let me have a swallow of water, I always forget. But yes, it seems things are going apace. And there shall be another grand event, perhaps with just as much intrigue as the last. But as I say, I think the next chapter will be our last for tonight, and I do not think it begins the actual dance itself, but is merely leading us into it. Still, it shall be a fine thing to start off on next week. I don't think there's too much else to say about this chapter, other than, again, what's the term? The indirect but subtle ways by which Mr. Churchill again introduces himself to Miss Fairfax, though he asks Emma for the dance, the first 2 dances at least. Much to be said on the matter, it would seem. But anyhow, let us press on. Chapter 30. One thing only was wanting to make the prospect of the ball completely satisfactory to Emma. Its being fixed for a day within the granted term of Frank Churchill's stay in Surrey. For, in spite of Mr. Weston's confidence, she could not think it so very impossible that the Churchills might not allow their nephew to remain a day beyond his fortnight. But this was not judged feasible. The preparations must take their time. Nothing could be properly ready till the 3rd week were entered on, and for a few days they must be planning, proceeding and hoping in uncertainty, at the risk, in her opinion, the great risk, of its being all in vain. Enscombe, however, was gracious in fact, if not in word. His wish of staying longer evidently did not please, but he was not opposed. All was safe and prosperous, and as the removal of one solicitude generally makes way for another, Emma, being now certain of her ball, began to adopt the next vexation Mr. Knightley's provoking indifference about it, either because he did not dance himself, or because the plan had been formed without his being consulted. He seemed resolved that it should not interest him, determined against its exciting any present curiosity, or affording him any future amusement. To her voluntary communications, Emma could get no more approving reply than, "Very well. If the Westons think it worthwhile to be at all this trouble for a few hours of noisy entertainment, I have nothing to say against it, but that they shall not choose pleasures for me. Oh yes, I must be there. I could not refuse, and I will keep as much awake as I can. But I would rather be at home looking over William Larkin's week's accounts. Much rather, I confess. Pleasure in seeing dancing, not I, indeed. I never look at it. I do not know who does. Fine dancing, I believe, like virtue, must be its own reward. Those who are standing by are usually thinking of something very different." This, Emma felt, was aimed at her, and it made her quite angry. It was not in compliment to Jane Fairfax, however, that he was so indifferent, or so indignant. He was not guided by her feelings in reprobating the ball, though she enjoyed the thought of it, to an extraordinary degree. It made her animated, open-hearted. She voluntarily said, "Oh, Miss Woodhouse, I hope nothing may happen to prevent the ball. What a disappointment it would be. I do look forward to it, I own, with very great pleasure." It was not to oblige Jane Fairfax, therefore, that he would have preferred the society of William Larkins. No, she was more and more convinced that Mrs. Weston was quite mistaken in that surmise. There was a great deal of friendly and of compassionate attachment on his side, but no love. Alas, there was soon no leisure for quarrelling with Mr. Knightley. 2 days of joyful security were immediately followed by the overthrow of everything. A letter arrived from Mr. Churchill to urge his nephew's instant return. Mrs. Churchill was unwell, far too unwell to do without him. She had been in a very suffering state, so said her husband, when writing to her nephew 2 days before, though from her usual unwillingness to give pain and constant habit of never thinking of herself, she had not mentioned it. But now she was too ill to trifle, and must entreat him to set off for Enscombe without delay. The substance of this letter was forwarded to Emma in a note from Mrs. Weston instantly. As to his going, it was inevitable. He must be gone within a few hours, and without feeling any real alarm for his aunt, to lessen his repugnance. He knew her illnesses. They never occurred but for her own convenience. Mrs. Weston added that he could only allow himself time to hurry to Highbury after breakfast and take leave of the few friends there whom he could suppose to feel any interest in him, and that he might be expected at Hartfield very soon. This wretched note was the finale of Emma's breakfast. When once it had been read, there was no doing anything but lament and exclaim. The loss of the ball, the loss of the young man, and all that the young man might be feeling. It was too wretched. Such a delightful evening as it would have been. Everybody so happy, and she and her partner the happiest. I said it would be so, was the only consolation. Her father's feelings were quite distinct. He thought principally of Mrs. Churchill's illness, and wanted to know how she was treated. And as for the ball, it was shocking to have dear Emma disappointed, but they would all be safer at home. Emma was ready for her visitor some time before he appeared, but if this reflected a pall upon his impatience, his sorrowful look and total want of spirits when he did come might redeem him. He felt that going away almost too much to speak of it. His dejection was most evident. He sat really lost in thought for the first few minutes, and when rousing himself it was only to say, "Of all horrid things, leave-taking is the worst." "But you will come again," said Emma. "This will not be your only visit to Randalls." "Ah," he said, shaking his head, "the uncertainty of when I may be able to return. I shall try for it with a zeal. It will be the object of all my thoughts and cares. And if my uncle and aunt go to town this spring. But I am afraid. They did not stir last spring. I am afraid it is a custom gone forever." "Our poor ball must be quite given up." "Ah, that ball. Why did we wait for anything? Why not seize the pleasure at once? How often is happiness destroyed by preparation, foolish preparation? You told us it would be so. Oh, Miss Woodhouse, why are you always so right?" "Indeed, I am very sorry to be right in this instance. I would much rather have been merry than wise." "If I can come again, we are still to have our ball. My father depends on it. Do not forget your engagement." Emma looked graciously. "Such a fortnight it has been," he continued, "every day more precious and more delightful than the day before, every day making me less fit to bear any other place. Happy, those who can remain at Highbury. As you do us such ample justice now, said Emma, laughing, I will venture to ask whether you did not come a little doubtingly at first. Do not we rather surpass your expectations? I am sure we do. I am sure you did not much expect to like us. You would not have been so long in coming if you had had a pleasant idea of Highbury. He laughed, rather consciously, and though denying the sentiment, Emma was convinced that it had been so. And you must be off this very morning? Yes. My father is to join me here. We shall walk back together, and I must be off immediately. I am almost afraid that every moment will bring him. Not 5 minutes to spare, even for your friends, Mrs. Fairfax and Miss Bates. How unlucky. Miss Bates' powerful, argumentative mind might have strengthened yours. Yes, I have called there. Passing the door, I thought it better. It was a right thing to do. I went in for 3 minutes and was detained by Miss Bates being absent. She was out, and I felt it impossible not to wait till she came in. She is a woman that one must laugh at, but that one would not wish to slight. It was better to pay my visit than... He hesitated, got up, walked to a window. In short, he said, perhaps, Miss Woodhouse, I think you can hardly be quite without suspicion. He looked at her, as if wanting to read her thoughts. She hardly knew what to say. It seemed like the forerunner of something absolutely serious, but she did not wish. Forcing herself to speak, therefore, in the hopes of putting it by, she calmly said, You were quite in the right. It was most natural to pay your visit then. He was silent. She believed he was looking at her, probably reflecting on what she had said, and trying to understand the manner. She heard him sigh. It was natural for him to feel that he had cause to sigh. He could not believe her to be encouraging him. A few awkward moments passed, and he sat down again, and in a more determined manner said, It was something to feel that all the rest of my time might be given to Hartfield. My regard for Hartfield is most warm. He stopped again, rose again, and seemed quite embarrassed. He was more in love with her than Emma had supposed, and who can say how it might have ended if his father had not made his appearance? Mr. Woodhouse soon followed, and the necessity of the exertion made him composed. A very few minutes more, however, completed the present trial. Mr. Weston, always alert when business was to be done, and as incapable of procrastinating any evil that was inevitable, as of foreseeing that any that was doubtful, said it was time to go, and the young man, though he might and did sigh, could not but agree and rise to take his leave. I shall hear all about you, he said. That is my chief consolation. I shall hear of everything that's going on among you. I have engaged Mrs. Weston to correspond with me. She has been so kind as to promise it. Oh, the blessing of a female correspondent when one is really interested in the absent. And she will tell me everything. In her letters I shall be at dear Highbury again. A very friendly shake of the head, a very earnest goodbye closed the speech, and the door had soon shut out Frank Churchill. Short had been the notice, short their meeting. He was gone, and Emma felt so sorry to part, and foresaw so great a loss to their little society from his absence, as to begin to be afraid of being too sorry, and feeling it too much. It was a sad change. They had been meeting almost every day since his arrival. Certainly his being at Randall's had been given great spirit to the last 2 weeks. Indescribable spirit. The idea, the expectation of seeing him with every morning had brought the assurances of his attention, his liveliness, his manners. It had been a very happy fortnight, and forlorn must be the sinking from it into the common course of Hartfield days. To complete every other recommendation, he had almost told her that he loved her. What strength, or what constancy of affection he might be subject to, was another point, but at present she could not doubt his having a decidedly warm admiration, a conscious preference of herself, and this persuasion, joined to all the rest, made her think that she must be a little in love with him, in spite of every previous determination against it. "I certainly must," said she. This sensation of listlessness, weariness, stupidity, this disinclination to sit down and employ myself, this feeling of everything's being dull and insipid about the house. I must be in love. I should be the oddest creature in the world if I were not, for a few weeks at least. Well, evil to some is always good to others. I shall have many fellow mourners for the ball, if not for Frank Churchill. But Mr. Knightley will be happy. He may spend the evening with his dear William Larkin now, if he likes. Mr. Knightley, however, showed no triumphant happiness. He could not say that he was sorry on his own account. His very cheerful look would have contradicted him if he had. But he said, and very steadily, that he was sorry for the disappointment of the others, and with considerable kindness added, "You, Emma, who have so few opportunities of dancing, you are really out of luck. You are very much out of luck." It was some days before she saw Jane Fairfax, to judge of her honest regret in this woeful change. But when they did meet, her composure was odious. She had been particularly unwell, however, suffering from headaches to a degree, which made her aunt declare that had the ball taken place, she did not think Jane could have attended it, and it was charity to impute some of her unbecoming indifference to the languor of ill health. And that is the end of chapter 30. And as we move back over now to a more comfortable spot, to give our last reflections. I have left the candle burning down there. I should go back and put it out, but it can wait. So then, what have we to say on the last of this matter? Well, first things first, there is to say that there is definitely some complicated relationship between at least Emma and Mr. Frank Churchill, though I think also between Miss Jane Fairfax and Mr. Frank Churchill. Though whether this is simply a confusion between Emma, or of Emma, of Mr. Churchill's actual intentions, or if Mr. Churchill is to some degree playing both sides, a Lothario of the highest order, well, it is hard to say for certain. He does seem a very charming man, but charm can be ill-used, certainly. As to the ball, well, so much has gone into it that I doubt that it will be completely abandoned, and perhaps Mr. Frank Churchill will have the chance to return. Indeed, it would be very strange if he did not, all the attention paid to him so far. But when and what form it will take, who can say? I had thought it would be the thing we would go into at the start of our next reading, but perhaps it lays further on in the future. As to the novel as a whole, what can we say of it? We're making some good progress. Let us see. Of the 430 pages, we are at about 230, a little past, so somewhat more than halfway through. Perhaps 5 more streams, especially if we plan for the last one to be perhaps a touch longer than usual, so that's to look forward to. But other than that, I don't think there's too much to say. I thank you as always for joining me, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I do so enjoy these little sessions, both in general and on Tuesday particularly. I take rather some pleasure in reading these a little bit differently than usual, and I hope you do too. It seems the facilities for raiding are working again, and as Varys is live, you're very welcome for the stream. I'm glad you've enjoyed it, yes. Varys is live, so we shall raid out to him. But other than that, I don't think there's too much else to say. Oh, actually, perhaps there's one thing I should say. Maybe not. I'll remind you another time. It can hold. But yeah, I do thank you all for having come. I do hope you enjoy the rest of your evening and the rest of your day, whatever time it is. Again, until such a time should happen that we again meet by you joining me in my next stream. But yes, I shall raid out to Varys for now. But I hope you have enjoyed, and as always, ta-ra.